All right, let's dive into two of the biggest words in education: curriculum and instruction. You probably hear them used all the time, maybe even interchangeably. But here's the thing: they're actually two very different concepts. And getting that difference? Well, that's the key to understanding how learning really works. So let's break it down.
So, I want you to think about this for a second. In any classroom, there's the plan for what students are supposed to learn, right? But then there's the action of how a teacher actually brings that plan to life. Are those two things the same? Nope, not at all. And that little gap between the plan and the action, that's exactly what we're going to explore.
You know, the easiest way to wrap your head around this is to think like an architect. Before you can even think about laying a foundation, you need a blueprint, right? A detailed plan. Well, in education, that blueprint tells us exactly what we're trying to build. Let's start with that.
Okay, so that blueprint, that's what we call the curriculum. And it's way more than just a list of topics from a textbook. It's the whole shebang, the entire planned experience. We're talking about the core content, the specific learning goals, the skills students are supposed to develop, and even how we're going to check if they've actually learned it.
But let's boil it all down. If you forget everything else, just remember this. Curriculum is the what. It's the answer to the big question: what are students supposed to be learning? Simple as that.
Let's make this super concrete. Imagine we're looking at a math blueprint for, say, a fifth grader. The topic on the plan is fractions. The objective is crystal clear. Students will be able to add and subtract fractions that have different denominators. And the skills we're building are things like problem solving and reasoning. See, it's all laid out, the whole plan. And it works the same way in other subjects too. Take science. The topic might be plants. The objective: students can explain the process of photosynthesis. The skills: inquiry and observation. The curriculum is basically the roadmap, right? It sets the destination for where we want the students to end up. Okay, so we've got our blueprint, but a blueprint is just paper, right? It doesn't build a house. For that, you need a builder and some action. This brings us to the second half of our analogy: the build. This is all about how we actually construct that knowledge, brick by brick, in the classroom. And that's what we call instruction. Instruction is all about the delivery. It's the actual methods, the teaching strategies, the hands-on activities that a teacher uses to make that curriculum blueprint come alive for students. So let's go back to our super simple breakdown. If curriculum is the what, then instruction is the how. It's the answer to the practical, on-the-ground question: okay, how are we actually going to get this done? It's the process. It's the action. Okay, remember that math blueprint about fractions? Let's look at the build for that. The instructional strategy could be using things you can actually touch. We call them manipulatives. And what's the activity? Well, maybe the teacher breaks out some model pizzas to make fractions visual and, honestly, kind of fun. And the method? Having students work together in groups to figure out problems. That is instruction in action. And what about that science blueprint for photosynthesis? Well, the instruction there might be all about experiments. The students get to get their hands dirty, literally. They set up a plant growth experiment, and then they observe and record what happens over a few weeks. This is how that objective on the blueprint actually gets met. All right, so we've looked at the blueprint and we've looked at the build. Let's put them right next to each other now and really nail down the differences. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. Look, curriculum, the blueprint, is all about what to teach. It's the content. Instruction, the build, is about how to teach it. It's the process. One is the plan, the other is the delivery. So the topic fractions lives in the curriculum, but the activity of using pizza models, that's 100% instruction. Okay, so here's the really important part. Even though they're different, curriculum and instruction are completely inseparable. You can't have one without the other if you want real learning to happen. The plan has to meet the action. Let me show you exactly what that looks like. Let's take a math example. Step 1, the blueprint. The curriculum says students need to learn how to solve linear equations. That's our goal. So step 2, the build, the instruction, is how the teacher gets them there. Maybe they model it step by step on the board and then use an interactive quiz to check for understanding. You see that? Blueprint, then build. Plan, then action. And it's the exact same story in science. The blueprint sets the target. Students will understand the different states of matter. Then the build makes that real. Students get to do an experiment, maybe melting a block of ice and watching it go from solid to liquid. The instruction, the experiment, is designed for one reason: to hit the goal set by the curriculum. They have to work together.
So, why are we spending all this time on this? I mean, Why does getting the difference between the blueprint and the build actually matter? For anyone, students, teachers, even parents.
Well, it comes down to one really important word: alignment. For learning to stick, for it to be really effective, the what and the how have to fit together perfectly, like two gears meshing. Think about it. You can have the most brilliant, detailed blueprint for a skyscraper, but if the construction crew uses the wrong materials or the wrong techniques, that building isn't going to be safe, right? It's the same in the classroom.
So we'll leave you with this thought. The real magic, the best learning, it happens right where a great plan meets great action. It's when a fantastic blueprint gets into the hands of a skilled, creative builder. So it's worth thinking about. How is that connection between curriculum and instruction working in your school or in your kids' classrooms? Where is that magic happening? Thanks so much for tuning in.